Against heavy spin, if our motion is too fast, the ball goes into the net. But if you slow down the motion, you can grip the ball with your rubber. Today's lesson is very practical. We'll focus on how to loop a pushed ball. First, let's analyze our own mistakes during a push rally, and then we'll discuss the opponent's ball. The first key point: there are 3 common errors players make in a push rally that you must avoid. The first error is failing to recover to your ready position after pushing, which makes you rushed for the next shot. You must actively recover after every push. This is a critical point. The second common error is pushing with too much spin on your own shot. If I push with light spin, the return is easy to loop. I can attack it with very little friction. However, if you push with heavy underspin, the return will also be very heavy, and you'll be beaten by your own spin. The third major problem is pushing the ball half long, which allows your opponent to push aggressively. This puts you at a disadvantage from the very first push of the rally, similar to playing against long pips. The reason your opponent can chop block you so effectively is because the quality of your push is too low. If you can push deep and heavy like Haigu, they can't attack and might even get jammed themselves. It's your weak push that gives them the opportunity to attack you. Alternatively, if your push is too short, the opponent can consistently chop deep, putting you in a passive position from the start. So, to create better attacking opportunities with your push, focus on 2 main principles. First, keep the ball low to prevent a power loop. Second, push the ball long. For example, in a rally, push the ball low and long. This prevents their attack and sets up your own. It's often because you push half long that they can initiate an attack. The most difficult situation is when they then counterplace the ball to your forehand. Their next shot is extremely fast because they can chop down on the half-long ball, making it very difficult to loop. If you push with very heavy spin, a skilled opponent can use that spin to create a spinny loop that is hard to block. But if your push isn't very spinny, they can't generate much spin themselves, making their attack much easier to defend. That covers our own pushing errors. Now for the second topic: how to create attacking opportunities for yourself. First, during a rally, focus on pushing long rather than spinny. This will make the return easier to attack. If I push this ball long, the next ball becomes much easier to loop. When you push long, the opponent's return will have less spin. When you push with heavy spin, the return will be heavy. Second, don't let them make contact above the ball and chop down, as this makes your loop much harder. If I push the ball too high, my opponent can chop down on it, creating a sharp, dipping ball that's very difficult to lift. Third, try not to let them push forward with force, as this will jam you. A high push allows them to drive forward and rush you. Ideally, you want to force your opponent to push upwards from below the ball. To make them push upwards, you must push the ball very low, forcing them to lift the ball over the net. Therefore, during a push rally, your priority should be to control the arc. A low arc forces an upward push, making your next attack simple, as a lifted ball has minimal spin. If they have to push up from under the ball, I can even flick it. That return has almost no spin. This is why elite players serve so low. It forces you to lift the ball, returning it with very little underspin. You might think they could just chop down on a low serve, but doing so on a very low ball will almost always result in hitting the net. So, force your opponent to contact the bottom of the ball. Don't let them chop down, because that shot dives sharply and is very powerful. Sometimes you feel like your push was spinny, but they can still flat hit it. This is because you lifted the ball from underneath, creating weak underspin which can be overpowered. Third, in a push rally, you must use variations in placement and tempo. This is what makes your follow-up attack effective. Otherwise, you'll loop the ball right back to where they are already standing. This makes your attack meaningless, because the attacker always takes the greater risk. Your attack placement is often too close to their previous shot's location. Unless you have a powerful loop, they won't make a mistake. You are always hitting to their recovery point. So what should you do instead? For example, if my backhand loop down the line is strong, I'll use it as my first attacking shot. If that's not an option, I can push to their middle to set up my attack. After pushing to their middle, I will loop towards their wide backhand. Or, I can push to their backhand and then loop to their middle to win the point. The goal is to make them move. The location of their previous shot and their next defensive shot must be different. Most players make the mistake of hitting the ball directly to where the opponent is standing, allowing for an easy block. Your first attack should be to win the point, not just to start a topspin rally. Otherwise, I might as well just let them attack and hope for an error. You must force movement. For example, push short to their forehand, then loop deep to their backhand. Or, push to their backhand and then follow up with a soft loop to their forehand. You don't need maximum power. These three strategies will give you better attacking opportunities from a push rally. Now, let's talk about the attack itself. You must observe the difference between a served ball and a pushed ball. A served ball is often faster and more direct. A pushed ball is slower but has more spin. A key characteristic of a pushed ball is that it lacks pace, it's heavy, low, and it dies quickly. Understanding this, you know you cannot stand too far from the table when preparing to attack a push. If you stand too far back, the ball will drop too low before it reaches you, and you'll be out of position. The ball might look powerful, but it dies here. If you're too far back, you can't generate any power. If you feel jammed when receiving a push, it's not because their ball is fast. It's because your recovery was slow. You're reacting to the outcome. You finish your push and you're not ready for the next ball, so of course you get jammed. If you recover immediately after your push, you will not be jammed. So, the problem is caused by your previous action. That's the first point. Second, during a push rally, you need a clear intention. Are you going to attack or not? If you decide not to attack, then focus on a consistent, safe push. Prepare to defend, make it difficult for them, and bait them into attacking so you can counter. When you decide to attack, you must immediately get into your attacking stance. You cannot be indecisive, thinking about both pushing and attacking at the same time. This creates confusion. You must be decisive, attack or defend. In the beginning, you will make mistakes when you try to attack. You have to accept this. The more you practice initiating the attack, the higher your success rate will become. Next, let's analyze the different types of spin on a push. The first type is very heavy underspin. You can identify it by a fast racket head acceleration and a sharp wrist action. It's not advisable for amateurs to try and power loop this ball. If you must attack a very heavy underspin ball, you have to loop it with heavy topspin for safety. If you try to drive through it, you will fail. Even professionals, despite their highlight reels, spend most of their time using heavy friction and playing with a higher margin of safety. The second type is normal underspin. Against this, you can execute your standard loop with a bit more quality. You can identify it because there is no downward chop and no sharp wrist snap. The motion is smooth and even. Against this type of moderate spin, you can use your normal technique to attack. The third type is a no-spin or floated push, often used by tricky penhold players. After you push, they just lift or float the ball back, causing players to loop it long off the table. Many experienced players will mix spinny and no-spin pushes. You must watch their racket motion carefully. Is their motion a spinny push or are they floating the ball? You have to see this clearly. Otherwise, you'll be inconsistent. You'll loop one into the net, try to brush more, and they'll float the next one. Then you'll try to hit it flatter, and they'll give you heavy spin. This will make you doubt your technique. These are the tricks of veteran players, especially penholders, who have a lot of variation in their game. So, you must watch their pushing technique closely and adapt your loop accordingly. So, let's categorize the underspin into three types: heavy, normal, and light. Against heavy underspin, your arm must start lower than the ball, and 80 to 90% of your stroke should be brushing for friction. Notice how my motion is not fast. In fact, it's quite slow. It's the same for the backhand against heavy spin. If our motion is too fast, the ball goes into the net. But if you slow down the motion, you can grip the ball with your rubber. Your stroke must be a brushing motion, not a hitting one. Acceleration is for generating power. Because this shot requires friction, if I swing too fast, it will become a flat hit. Therefore, I need to slow down and extend the stroke to ensure I get enough friction on the ball. The motion is slow, but the friction is high. The stroke needs to be long and complete. The faster you swing against a heavy underspin ball, the more you will be affected by its spin. Second point, the spinnier the ball, the lower you should let it drop before contact. As I mentioned, if you contact the ball at the top of the bounce, the spin is at its maximum. As it drops, the spin decreases. So, let the ball drop to a lower point. By contacting the ball at a lower point, the spin will be less intense. For example, on the forehand side, I could loop at this contact point. This point is where I wait for it to drop to my knee level, instead of my waist level, which is the ideal height for a power loop. By waiting for the ball to drop to knee height, my timing is better and my stroke is much calmer. So, we are changing our contact point from high to low. Wait for the ball to drop to this point before you execute the loop. Consciously wait for the ball to drop to roughly knee height before you start your swing. Third, against a heavy underspin ball, should you use more or less of your upper arm? You must not use your upper arm against a no-spin ball. That would be overpowering the shot. For a no-spin ball, you must control the upper arm to generate precise power and ensure the ball lands on the table. So, a light spin ball requires less upper arm. But what about a heavy spin ball? Players who use a big arm swing are not afraid of spin. Even with no wrist action, the upper arm alone can lift the ball over the net. Even with a stiff wrist, the arm swing itself is enough to lift the ball. Normally, your upper and lower arms should be separated. But since amateurs lack professional power and feel, you must use your upper arm to create more arc against heavy spin. The reason you hit the net is that your swing motion resembles a flat forehand drive. You're using a drive or block motion, so the stroke is not lifting the ball. For a forehand loop, if you use a flat-hitting drive motion, the ball will definitely go into the net. After making contact, can you use your upper arm to lift and create a higher arc? You try to add more friction, but it still goes into the net because you're cutting your follow-through short. Don't cut off the arc, lift the ball up and then finish your stroke. The ball will clear the net. Today's topic is how to successfully loop a spinny push, not how to add more spin. The focus now is on consistency. This is not about generating your own spin, you are at a different stage of learning. To clarify about using the upper arm, I don't mean just lifting straight up. I mean avoiding a flat drive motion by using the arm to create a higher, safer arc. In this situation, your ball's trajectory will be much more forgiving. When I say use the upper arm, I don't mean a huge, wild swing. A forehand drive finishes here. A forehand loop finishes higher. That small difference in height is what creates a safe arc. The second type is normal underspin. For this, you can just use your standard looping technique. If you can read the spin correctly, you can attack it. The third and most difficult type is the light or no spin push. When they float the ball, hitting it normally puts it in the net, but hitting too hard sends it off the table. The key to this shot is to control that lifting part of the stroke, specifically, the direction of your arm. If the ball has little spin, your upper arm and forearm should drive forward. The upward motion comes from the forearm. Against a no-spin ball, watch my arm. The first part of the motion is forward. When hitting a heavy topspin loop, it's like this. You need more upward motion. Against weak underspin, it's more horizontal. Don't let your upper arm lift too much, or the ball will fly long. Your arm needs to drive forward and rotate inward to control the shot against light spin. By driving forward and turning in, you can control the arc. In this situation, you must avoid the motion used for heavy topspin. At this stage, we're focused on the right stroke and angle to get the ball on the table. Once you can do that, you can work on generating your own spin. To create topspin, you need to use your arm to lift and create a higher arc. But for a no-spin ball, your arm must drive more forward, with the forearm providing the lift. The upper arm should not continue lifting, as this will make the ball go long. To summarize, you must avoid your own errors in a push rally, learn to create attacking opportunities, and know how to handle different types of spin. If you master this, all of your problems in a push rally will be solved.